They rose to take on the challenge of America's South Atlantic coast and became a cherished part of our landscape.
It's a warm feeling to be coming in on the ferry and look over and see the lighthouse, you know.
It's the backdrop for everything.
It's the light in the darkness, directing you to safety.
The lighthouse has sort of been a symbol, a monument to an age that will probably never be repeated or relived again.
The legendary lighthouses of the South Atlantic. From the brisk waters off North Carolina to the sun-drenched Florida Keys, America's South Atlantic coast has long been a region of quiet retreat, serenity, and a refuge of tranquility. But not everything about this coast is kind.
Today we take so much for granted with all the global positioning, sophisticated equipment, and we really don't understand and appreciate the inherent dangers of our coastline. And that is particularly true from North Carolina down to Key West. Geographically, one of the most notoriously dangerous areas along the eastern seaboard. The mariner had a lot of difficulty knowing where those dangers might be. In the darkness and in the storm, the light in the lighthouse itself became your salvation.
Nowhere was warning needed more than along the Outer Banks of North Carolina, where the northern moving Gulf Stream and the southbound Labrador Current nearly collide. The violent clash of waters creates one of the most infamous of submerged hazards, Diamond Shoals. Over 500 ships have met their end on its sands, earning these waters the nickname the graveyard of the Atlantic. The tide of destruction led to the building of the tallest and most famous lighthouse in America, Cape Hatteras Light. In a region with no high ground to perch on, the tower had to create its own height. Hatteras Light reaches skyward nearly 200 feet to cast its beam to the horizon. Creating this 19th century wonder was no easy task.
This isn't your typical lighthouse. The early engineers had to figure out a way to make a tower that was 200 feet tall, able to withstand hurricane-force winds, but was grounded in sand.
As historian for the Outer Banks Historical Society, Tom Yoakum has studied the builders' innovative solution. They would create firm ground where there was none.
The designer of this lighthouse dug a large hole and he laid a series of yellow pine planks. Over top of that, they put on a lot of cut granite stone, and that's what this entire 3,000-ton lighthouse rests upon.
Having this light on top of a 200-foot tower allowed the beam to reach out to Diamond Shoals and about 20 miles out. It's the 5th level and 110 steps up. The early lightkeepers had to go up all 268 steps, so they had to carry 2 5-gallon cans of kerosene. We're at the top of the 268 steps, about 175 feet above the beach here. It's a place called the watch room. This is where the lightkeeper would come and make sure that the mechanism which rotated the light was running the way it should. Okay, we're at the top. This is one of the two 1,000 watt bulbs which currently powers the light, about the same intensity and distance that the original lighthouse had. This light was the pinnacle of technology when it was completed in 1870, and it's been able to withstand more than 125 years of some of the most punishing weather that nature can dish up. And it's been able to do its job admirably, and it saved thousands and thousands of lives.
The danger over which Hatteras Lighthouse broods also has its beauty. The barrier islands of the Outer Banks draw thousands of vacationers every year. But its treacherous nature remains. Reminders are never far away, lying just below the surface of the sea and land.
I have no doubt that there are shipwrecks under all of these beachfront houses here. There's probably hardly a house up here that doesn't have a shipwreck in its basement. The wrecks are appearing and disappearing all the time. There were hundreds of wrecks all up and down these beaches because there were no... Now here, this looks like the wreck right here.
Lloyd Childers is a retired official with the State Historic Preservation Office. She's director of nearby Currituck Beach Lighthouse and an inveterate beachcomber for historic wrecks.
This was the keel part, in other words, the beam that goes down the middle of the wreck. It could have been something like a two-masted schooner. What happened after the Civil War was that as industry began to build in the north, they began to want to take advantage of the southern markets. And so a tremendous amount of shipping was occurring. What they did, they of course had the wonderful Hatteras light, but the next light up was Cape Henry, Virginia, and there was a tremendous dark spot between these two. And Currituck was one of the places that they chose to try to interrupt that darkness. What this was a landmark for where they were and how close they were to Hatteras. During the day, they could look up and they could see the red brick lighthouse, and they knew that this was Currituck because it was the only one that was red brick.
When completed in 1875, the Currituck Beach Lighthouse and the keepers' homes were the only buildings around for miles. Today, they support a museum where visitors can tour the grounds and climb the 163-foot tower. Inside, they get a glimpse at how the great industrial age came to lighthouses. Cast iron stairs that were factory-built and brought by barge led to the most exquisite invention of lighthouse design. The French-made Fresnel lens. It threw a beam farther than ever before, in a place Lloyd Childers knows mariners needed it most.
I think it would be especially scary for a sailor in the darkness here. To hear the pounding of the surf, you can't tell where the shore is. You can't tell where the water begins and the sand ends, or the sky or whatever. So in the midst of that darkness, if there's a beam of light from a lighthouse, that must have been a tremendous beacon of hope for them. Well, that must have been a wonderful sight.
Some parts of the Outer Banks have been spared from development. Within the protected Cape Hatteras National Seashore, Bodie Island Lighthouse sits in surroundings almost unchanged from the 1930s. In those days, the family of Vernon Gaskill called the lighthouse home. Vernon walked the grounds not only as head lightkeeper, but as a hero to his children, especially his youngest son, John.
We watched his duty that he performed. We would come up with him sometimes in the evening to light the light and see all the things he had to do. I like to go up it. It's always a pleasure for me to go up the tower. It's getting harder every year. It's a lot worse at 82 than 18. It was a good childhood that I had here. It was boring at times, but we did have things to do. Our chores kept us busy part of the time, and our free time we're fishing, boating, and beach combing, things like that. In the inside the lighthouse, we race going up, which I never could run all the way to the top, but coming down it was very fast. Our feet only touched about 4 or 5 steps on each flight of stairs. We were in a kind of like a free fall, controlled, we thought. The only thing I can remember of any importance was when my brother fell down the stairs and bit part of his tongue off. And that little piece was hanging, and Daddy took the scissors that he used to trim the torch and cut it off. Didn't affect his speech any, but he had a little less tongue than he had before. Every keeper tried to keep his station up, especially when the lighthouse service come by. And usually we would know if an inspector was coming because the first lighthouse he hit, he'd send a word on down. Then everybody got busy. Everything had to be polished. Oh, my father didn't want us to clean the lens, mainly because we'd be in the way of him and his assistant. It was a special lens for lighthouses. We did know they'd come from France because the sticker, or the nameplate on the column says Paris. My father being a lighthouse keeper, and my uncle and great uncle and great grandfather being lighthouse keepers. I assume I have it in my blood. But Coast Guard took over the lighthouse service in 1939, and that's when, right after that, Daddy was transferred from here, and they never had a keeper here since then.
Few places along the Outer Banks remain as isolated as Ocracoke Island. An enduring symbol of the village has stood since 1823, Ocracoke Lighthouse. It's one of the oldest active lights on the South Atlantic coast and a reassuring sight to generations of islanders.
It's a warm feeling to be coming in on the ferry and look over and see the lighthouse, you know, and it sort of greets you, brings you home. A steady light guides you right on the end.
A member of one of the oldest families on the island, ferry pilot Rudy Austin sees the lighthouse as being as much a part of Ocracoke as the village itself.
It's probably one of the few lighthouses that's right in the community itself, you know. Most of them are either on the outskirts or on a hill or, you know, on a high spot somewhere else, you know. But this one's right in the community. This has been a major focal point of the community. All the kids used to play here when we were growing up. It's just sort of like a big playground to us, you know. When I was growing up here, there wasn't many lights around here. There wasn't any street lights. Yeah, it was the brightest thing around. Sure was.
It's sort of hard to explain what it feels like to have a lighthouse a part of your life.
A resident since childhood, Christina Kurth owns a pottery shop.
When I was 13 in the summer, I lived in a house that was in the depending on how you look at it, in the lighthouse's backyard. And I lived in the upstairs bedroom, and the beam fell right into the bedroom. A really clear, beautiful shaft of light. I'd stay up late at night and read by the lighthouse, you know, so, and write in my diary, 13, you know. It's the backdrop for everything. We used to walk the streets of Ocracoke, you know, the big social event of Saturday night. We'd start at the keeper's cottage and come down around the loop, down Point, and then back into the village. And of course, you wanted to hang out on the main drag as much as possible. Obviously, some of the older buildings have changed over time, but there's fixed points in the landscape, and definitely the lighthouse. I mean, that's always been here. The lighthouse has a life on 4 sides of it, but you wouldn't really know that if you pulled in and looked up that long picket rail fence. It seems sort of presented to you, but really there are 3 other sides to the lighthouse that belong to the village, belong to the community. Certain things about the community have always remained the same, and the lighthouse is one of those things. It helps you measure your life. The lighthouse helps you measure your life.
In preserving the past, few cities can match Charleston, South Carolina. Thousands of meticulously maintained homes stand as a tribute to Charleston's place as one of the wealthiest ports during the nation's first century. But nearby, a beloved structure that long drew the ships here awaits rescue. Morris Island Lighthouse, the sole survivor of an island that is today no more, a victim of the ever-encroaching sea. The erosion has not erased memory of the island, nor the extraordinary day the tide suddenly came to take it away.
We often discuss the tidal surge because we lost so much that was dear to us there.
Gladys Myers Davis came to Morris Island with her father, a lightkeeper, and her family in 1933.
Morris Island was lush, tropical, and really a paradise, really. It really was. It's a great place to live, great place to grow up. One thing about it, they knew where we were. My mom and dad, they didn't have to go hunt for us. They knew we weren't going to get off the island. They had been there so long, we didn't think there was any danger. We were not prepared for what happened. Because I can remember looking out the window upstairs. We had ironwork gate, and I remember telling my father, of course, I didn't know any different. To close the gate, the water was coming in. It was part of an incoming tide, and once it started, then it continued a little bit more each day. Eventually, the walls crumbled. We lost everything we had, our German Shepherd, Wolf, and a little kitten that Wolf used to carry around, and my dad had his Model T. We lost that also. When we left there, I mean, you definitely could see that it was a gradual thing, but it was gone. I mean, you knew what was going to happen in the end. Having lived there, you can visualize what it was years ago and how much it meant to me and my family.
lighthouses have survived less subtle threats. The scars of one of the most brutal attacks of the Civil War pockmarked the walls of Fort Pulaski, outside Savannah, Georgia. In the spring of 1862, after a two-day bombardment, Confederate troops surrendered the fort. They did more than save themselves. They also spared Cockspur Island Lighthouse. Caught between Union and Confederate forces, it emerged miraculously untouched. The abandoned tower survives as the rest of the world passes it by. Nearby Tybee Island has seen its share of change. Today, it's a weekend spot, as well as home to many looking to escape the city life of Savannah. They all come to know one particular outsized neighbor, the Tybee Island Lighthouse. One of the first of the great southern lighthouses, it has withstood the heat and salty air of coastal Georgia since 1867. But not without dedicated help.
The Tybee Lighthouse hadn't been painted in over 20 years, so as a result, we're going to have to do some fairly extensive work to bring it back to standards.
Colin Chambers is a lighthouse preservationist. His goal is to have Tybee Light meet the strict codes of a century ago.
If a district inspector were to come in today and find this lighthouse in the condition it's in, I, as the keeper, would be shot. I consider myself a historic preservationist who's focused his career on the restoration of lighthouses. The idea is to restore the lighthouse on Tybee to the way the keepers would have maintained it in its heyday. Cast iron is a great metal used in lighthouses, and unfortunately, without the protective coatings, the paint to protect it, it starts rusting, and so one of the things we're going to have to do is sandblast the metal work and then recoat it. These are, it's kind of like almost a vertebrae, if you will. They basically place these concentric rings over each other and literally work their way from the ground floor all the way up to the top of the lighthouse. Just about every brick lighthouse in America has cracks like this in it, but not this radical. What happened here is an earthquake of 1886 moved down the eastern seaboard and caused a lot of structural damage to brick lighthouses. So we're basically just going to regrout this and then paint over it, and it won't be very discernible after we get the coating on it. Last year we removed the flaking paint from the wall, and when we did that we discovered our earliest evidence of graffiti. And what it might have been was one of the workers here repairing the damage from the 1886 earthquake. Historically, all the interior spaces were painted white. The idea was it would magnify the lantern light as they climbed these stairs at night. So one of the things we're going to do is take all this loose mortar off and then re-whitewash the inside of this lighthouse. This has got to be one of the most important and challenging parts of the lighthouse restoration effort. We have a first order Fresnel lens. The Coast Guard currently requires that we insure this thing from anywhere from $1 to $3 million, so it's an incredibly valuable artifact. We would have a real problem of replacing these prisms. That's one of the reasons we're so concerned with this damage on this focal plane. One of the first things we have to do before construction actually starts is protect this historic optic. I want to believe when we get it restored it's going to pass inspection. That's part of my goal, is to make sure this thing gleams again.
Among the barrier islands of Georgia, Sapelo Island seems lost in another century.
Sapelo is a very isolated, remote island. The only access is by water. We have a ferry boat service that runs back and forth from the mainland twice a day.
As reserve manager on Sapelo, Bodie Sullivan oversees a unique 16,000-acre island of marshes, woodlands, and abundant wildlife.
We have a very large white-tailed deer herd on the island. We also have wild turkey, some wild hogs. We have cattle roaming at open range. We also have a tremendous amount of bird life on Sapelo. We're in the middle of a very active flyway.
Of the island's many curiosities, none carries more mystique than a tower that has stood on the island's wooded shore since 1820, Sapelo Island Lighthouse.
The Lighthouse Tower now has of course been here for over 175 years, long unused and slowly decaying and going to ruin. It's been somewhat of a romantic symbol of the bygone age of shipping at the south end of Sapelo Island. We got the idea several years ago that the lighthouse was certainly worth saving and definitely worth preserving.
The state of Georgia undertook the challenge of repairing the lighthouse and brought together a team of architects and craftsmen.
We got 43 3/4.
This has been an unusually tough job for the restoration effort. The men who've been on this job, I have found that they are really into what they're doing. They're excited about it, and they're very, very involved with the historical aspects of it. I think it's more than just a job to them. And I see where they're getting the roof. Yeah. The roof looks like it's going to be. Yeah, it's coming along. It's going to be great. We're getting there. People in this area are very in tune with what's happening here. They have a very strong sense of place. The lighthouse tower now has been used, even though it hasn't been an operating lighthouse. It's still a very important day mark for sport fishermen and commercial fishermen. You know, you learn very early in life by living in a section like this to get your feet muddy and tromp through the marshes and catch oysters and crabs. You get a rowboat and you get out on the estuary, and much of the history of Sapelo is associated with navigational history. It's the people have lived by the water, by the rivers, and by the sea.
Whenever I first started back in '78, I come up here and they showed me how to line the lighthouse up.
George Trutt is a longtime shrimp and conch fisherman who has worked the waters off Sapelo for 4 decades.
We go along here like this. When it drops off in a V, we can turn and go right straight from the lighthouse and get right up on top of the beach. There's a slough in there, and then we can drag right down the slough. And that slough's been there for years. Most of the guys, they'll come out here and make a drag or two today and they don't catch nothing. They go back. You got to stick with it. And if you stick with it, you're going to, sooner or later, you're going to hit. The lighthouse, you know, when it's hazy like it is today, we couldn't see it. But if they get it repainted and be bright, you'll be able to line it up better.
It's been a challenge. It's been a very difficult job, but now we're at a point where the lighthouse is ready to be open to the public, and it will be a functioning light again, as well as the symbol, a monument to an age that will probably never be repeated or relived again.
Just across the Florida border, Amelia Island Lighthouse finishes another night. Public access here is limited, except for civilians like Lou Eason, of the Coast Guard Auxiliary.
Lighthouse work was never my background. Never had a clue, but I found it something that I really enjoy doing. Now, the flotilla members have very affectionately nicknamed me Lighthouse Louie.
The chance to be a part-time keeper came when the Coast Guard asked the auxiliary for assistance. Lou and the flotilla took on the job with relish.
We decided that we would go as early as possible in the mornings. And it's very nice. You get up pretty close to dawn and go up there and everything's quiet. No one's up. It's fantastic. Bring my coffee, my newspaper, and it's all mine. We climbed these massive granite stone stairs, and the first room we come to is what we call the machine room. This is the room that houses the drive mechanism for turning the lens. That beautiful set of prisms, that great big chandelier. We have the necessary materials on hand to dust these prisms. And one of the rules we have when we go up to work on this thing is we shed all of our jewelry, particularly rings. The top of the lighthouse, it's real therapy. I mean, you forget all the problems of the week, you forget your job, you forget any problems around the house. It is so absolutely serene. You just want to just stand there and take all of it you can get for as long as you can get. I've been very grateful with this opportunity. It's super to be able to take advantage of those things that come your way. For a very short period of time, you've got your own little wonderland.
Farther down the Florida coast, another lighthouse has more than its share of visitors, over 130,000 a year. St. Augustine Lighthouse is one of the first lighthouses in the country to allow tourism.
We used to run up. People were amazed, you know.
As children of a keeper, Wilma Daniels Thompson and her brother Cracker lived a kid's fantasy. They were guides to a lighthouse.
Well, we come here in 1935, and I was only 3 years old, but I really enjoyed it because we had the beach and the lighthouse to go up.
Tours in St. Augustine. It's been going on for years.
Daddy being the head keeper, we had more advantages because we used to take the tourists up there and they'd give us a quarter or a dime, and well, a quarter you could go to the movies and buy popcorn and everything. Everybody liked Daddy. He was really a good father, even though he was real busy.
Well, he's just a tall, thin fella. Kept his weight down by running up and down the lighthouse. You never see a fat lighthouse keeper.
There was 5 children, and Cracker was the oldest, and I was the baby.
Some days we'd have 5 or 6 carloads come in, or then some days you wouldn't have any.
Well, this feels like home, brings back memories. You forget a lot of things, but since we've been coming back here, a lot of things come back to me.
Not far from Daytona Beach, the past is alive and well at Ponce Inlet. A decades-long effort has restored almost every building that belongs to the Ponce de Leon Lighthouse. The second tallest lighthouse on the East Coast, it reaches 175 feet. It has almost all its original pieces, save one, its Fresnel lens.
The Fresnel lens is the essence of a lighthouse.
Jim Dunlap is curator of the lighthouse. He heads a group of volunteers who work to restore lenses, including the Fresnel that used to sit in the tower outside.
We couldn't really find anybody that had done a complete restoration of the lens. We made a lot of phone calls, talked to a lot of experts, and more or less learned by trial and error. I'm removing the glazing from the panels now, and then we can take the prisms out of the panels. When we get the prisms out, then we'll catalog all the damage. The missing glass is a big problem because to create a mold and actually do a production for one piece of glass is very, very expensive, and it's even hard to talk a glassmaker into even attempting a process like that.
The reason is simple. A 19th century Fresnel lens was as ingenious in its design as it was painstaking to make. The lens is actually an elaborate orchestration of an array of lenses and dozens of prisms. Each piece is molded, polished, and set precisely to redirect diffuse lamplight into a unified, far-reaching beam. Today, though the glass craftsmen are gone, other options may be on the horizon. One comes from volunteer Dan Spinella, an engineer with nearby Walt Disney World.
I'm a mechanical designer, and I have no previous experience in optics. I've seen a need at other lighthouses for replacing prisms also, and I was looking at a more cost-effective means of replacing those prisms. This is a first-order bullseye. It's damaged, and it belongs to the Ponce Inlet lens. This is one of the lenses that I needed to replace. The first step was to find a material that would look like glass and optically act like glass. And my choice was acrylic because the index of refraction was identical to the crown glass that they used in the 1800s. This was also cast in a mold. The mold was machined according to Fresnel's original formulas. The acrylic itself is formulated with a pigment in it to replicate the greenish hue of the historic prism. And optically, this lens should operate exactly as the original. What I'd like to do is help any lighthouse that has restoration needs with their lenses, whether it be in a museum or in the tower itself.
The Lighthouse Museum has several Fresnels awaiting repair. Each lens has its own story. How one of them became damaged is an ironic footnote to the history of lighthouses.
T-minus 10 seconds. 9, 8, 7. Go from 8 engine start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And liftoff of Space Shuttle Columbia.
As rockets put navigational satellites into the sky, they put lighthouses out of work. None suffered more directly than Cape Canaveral Lighthouse. The vibrations from rocket launches damaged the lens. It was removed in 1993. Cape Canaveral Light remains a monument to a time when the ocean was our boldest frontier. Residents and vacationers alike lose themselves to the fun, sun, and surf of southern Florida. But on the edge of Key Biscayne, a lighthouse stands as a vestige from an era when this was no place to be lost. Since 1825, Cape Florida Lighthouse has marked the threshold of the most notorious region along the South Atlantic coast. The grounds are managed by the Florida Department of Parks and Recreation. The light's significance is the passion of local historian Joan Gill Blank.
Cape Florida is really at the crossroads of history. Whether you are heading here from South America, from the Caribbean islands, from Africa, whether you're on your way northeast, you have to pass by Cape Florida. The lighthouse system decided to put a light on Cape Florida so that the ships would know where they were before they came to the dangerous Florida Reef, where the pirates and the wreckers were waiting for them. And if they ran up on them, then this was the end of the journey.
The islands of the Florida Keys were a perfect haven for pirates, while the surrounding reefs served another kind of sea robber. Called wreckers, they presented themselves as salvagers of wrecked ships who saved passengers and precious goods. In reality, many were scavengers racing to enrich themselves on spilt cargo. Some even mimicked lighthouses, using lanterns to lure ships onto the reefs. To make this region safe for ships, a light needed to be directly on the reef. The designers settled on a screw pile structure.
Most of your lighthouses anywhere else in the country are usually structured out of stone or brick or concrete, with usually maybe the top part of it being metal, which here they're all complete steel. And their bases are made so that the sands can shift underneath them and they won't move.
This is Sand Key Lighthouse. For bosun's mate Ray Potter, inspecting the reef lights is the highlight of being in the Coast Guard.
I love getting out here. This is part of my job, being a bosun's mate and being out on the water. And being able to see the views out here, this is excellent. You know, this is my life. I love coming out to the lighthouses, all of them. My original reasons for joining the Coast Guard is I wanted to be a lighthouse keeper. That was what I wanted to do. And when I came in, shortly after I went through my initial boot camp training and everything, they started closing most of the lighthouses, so they were dwindling very fast. This is the last opportunity to even get the deal with any of the lighthouses, was to get into the aids to navigation. When we do major work on the lights and stuff, we get to spend all day afternoon out of the different reef lights. The structure itself is in very good condition. Like I said, there's a lot of abuse here from weather and such, but as for its age and construction, it's held up very, very well for the time that it's been here. All we're waiting for is the final fixing of the structure, and the light will be up and we'll be relighting this light. This lighthouse will be shining its beacon once again.
Six reef lights line the Keys, and they have now entered a new age. In 1990, this 3,500 square mile expanse of islands and precious coral became the Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary. Spencer Slate runs Captain Slate's Dive Shop. he helped fight for the sanctuary and sees lights like Carysford Reef Lighthouse as an integral part of his business and the survival of the reef itself.
We're in the center of the Key Largo National Marine Sanctuary, which is the largest dive destination in the world. Over 1 million divers and snorkelers come to the Keys and Upper Keys a year. So most people all over the world have seen this lighthouse at one time or the other when they come here diving or snorkeling. Okay, air's on. Well, you just wait to step in when he comes up to the surface. Put your step to the right of the line. Put your hand on your mask, regulator in your mouth. Hand on your mask. Big step.
Big step.
It's a beautiful sloping reef that comes out from under the lighthouse. Then it gets out about to where we're anchored and drops pretty rapidly into 70 feet of water. It's one of our favorite dives. The lighthouses aren't very popular reefs areas because they're sitting on shallow reefs, and that's where most of the pretty coral is. And the reason being, of course, to keep ships from running aground like they have over the centuries. And it also marks a nice place to come.
Carysford Lighthouse has withstood over a century of corrosive salt air and countless storms. The Coast Guard and the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration have refurbished the structure. But this is just the start of Carysford's transformation. Tom Pennycamp, whose father John led the push for the first state marine sanctuary here, is working to turn the former keeper's quarters into a modern marine lab.
This is going to be a lot of work. There's no question about it. A lot of work's gone on already. Carysford Reef Light, up to about 2 years ago, was really in bad shape. It had degenerated down. It wasn't safe. It was not a safe structure. The Coast Guard came out here and worked with us and also with the NOAA, and they put a lot of money into it about over the last, say, 2 years and brought it back structurally. Today, it's as sound as it was the day it was built. And it is really, it's going to be here long after I'm gone and a lot of other people. Coral reefs, they have degenerated worldwide, but we don't understand why they get sick. And that's what we need the facility out here for. It will be the only offshore lab situated on water in the United States. To warn ships of shallow water, etc., reefs, and so on. All the lights up and down the coast, that's what they were for. But that's turned around now. What we really need is to save the reefs from the ships, because the ships can navigate. The reef can't. The reef is here.
No place benefited from the reefs more than Key West, where vigilant wreckers scouted the surrounding waters for foundering ships. The wrecking industry made this one of the richest ports in 19th century America. For generations, this has been a haven for outlaws, castaways, and eccentrics, and home to a light that holds a poignant place in lighthouse history, Key West Lighthouse. In the 1930s, a man named William Demerit was the last civilian keeper here. To museum director Joe Pace, he may also have been its most heroic.
He was known as a little odd for the time, very outspoken. He was smart enough to know that the time of the lighthouse keeper was very short. And of course, he was correct. Franklin Delano Roosevelt reorganized the lighthouse service, and by 1939, William Demerit realized that he would lose his job here. And in a visit that Franklin D. Roosevelt did pay to the Florida Keys, he was being introduced to a number of local dignitaries, and of course, William Demerit was one of them. And he argued with the president concerning doing away with the lighthouse service. We have a great picture of the president. His face is contorted, and he's letting Demerit have it. And Demerit in the picture obviously just had words with the President of the United States, and obviously those words were that you don't understand what you're doing, that you don't understand the tradition of the lighthouses. The picture is a favorite of lighthouse enthusiasts because that picture marks the last cry of an independent breed in the very last spot of the United States that was free. Key West is a very, very seductive place. People still come here because it's the last point, the end of the rainbow, the end of the road. And many people are attracted to that type of lifestyle. They're attracted to the tropics. But even today, you definitely have that feeling. The same type of people that are here today, I'm certain existed back then. I think if you put a little scarf on the head of a lot of people in this town, you've got a pirate. People of Key West are very prideful and independent people. They enjoy their history here, a history of various independent-minded people, the history of the pirates, the history of the wreckers. That tradition of wrecking is commemorated during April. One of the things that they do is have a wreckers race.
The annual Dash to Sand Key Light is organized by a local institution, Schooner Wharf Bar, and its co-owner, Evelina Worthington.
It's a lot of the boats from Key West, anything from multi-hulls to big old schooners to classic boats to smaller little dinghy type boats. So it's a lot of fun. It's for everybody to enter in the race. And so you don't have to know anything about racing. You just have to know where Sand Key Lighthouse is and go for it.
As elsewhere, a lighthouse has become more than the far-off beacon of warning it was intended to be. People have made it a goal, a measure, a point of reference in their lives as they move across waters made safe by its beam long ago. Whether of steel, brick, or stone, the lighthouse is our universal memorial to the power of the sea. No matter how we find our way in the future, they hold an honored place along America's South Atlantic coast, where every evening, from the outer banks of North Carolina to the distant Florida Keys, they awaken. Their light, a reminder not only of where we are, but where we've been. A radiant fixture of hope that we sense will always be.